Yeah, I think this will do nicely. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to this week's episode of Guns and Cameras. I am right now in the Tokens of Valor studio, which doubles as my garage. Pretty small space right now. But I've got a 50 caliber Desert Eagle round here. I've got some jade beads and some wood beads from Israel that I think would make a pretty cool bracelet. Or maybe a pendant. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm going to work on that while the episode is running. I'm super excited to introduce you to our next guest. He is a legendary creator that got his start in professional photography back before digital cameras were mainstream, and had to shoot advertising campaigns with large format, medium format, Hasselblad type cameras. 35 millimeter. I mean, we're talking like you had to know your stuff back then, especially if you were working professionally, because you sometimes only had a handful of shots before you blew your budget on film. But his perspective on the shift, working professionally pre-digital and now post-digital workflows, is super interesting, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So while I get into creating the next wearable work of art, hand-forged, not digital, you guys enjoy this week's episode of Guns and Cameras. So shooters, are you ready? Stand by. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Guns and Cameras podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Best, and today we are joined by yet another very special guest. I am almost 100% positive you have seen his work before. We have Mr. Matt Lingo. Matt, thank you for being on the show with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm a 41-year-old photographer here in San Diego. Been shooting for about 20 years, 18 of that professionally. Um, I work mostly in tactical and firearms and a lot of tech-based companies with military application. And then I'm head of 3D projects over at Clandestine Media.
Oh, that's awesome. Matt, how did you get started in, well, first off, with cameras, then with guns, and then into the industry now that you are crushing it?
It was a strange path, I guess, kind of, because I started out I was just skateboarding. I just had a camera. I was taking pictures of stuff to make stencils out of, and I fell on my neck kind of weird, and I couldn't exactly turn my head to the right for a little bit. So I started just shooting pictures of my friends. And then when their sponsors started buying them, then it was like, okay, maybe I can do something with this. But this was like '05, '06. There was no University of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So I did what you had to do then, which was go to school. But my goal was to be commercial. And I show up and they're like, oh, well, you get to shoot film and learn about fine art. So, which I actually enjoyed. I shot everything from 35 millimeter medium format. I spent a year working large format. Um, but the goal was just to use school as a springboard to get out, start
Mm-hmm.
working. So I dropped out, moved up to LA, much to my professors being upset with me. But I started working in LA, but I only lasted a year. Everything that you'd think about that city being a stereotype is 100% true. But it was a good experience. I worked in a product photography studio there for a bit, but when I moved back down, I was just shooting some cycling stuff. I had a photo studio, and then I got in action sports. DC Shoes reached out, and so I was their BMX photographer for a while. And then they started giving me rally car as well, which was a lot of fun working with like Ken Block, all the Gymkhana stuff. From there, I went over to Red Bull for a bit, and then when my son was born, I've always been kind of a single dad, so I stopped taking pictures for about 3 years, just because if you have kids, a toddler is a special kind of evil you don't wish on anybody. So I took a job in marketing as a marketing director of a cycling company, which was good because then I learned more of the application for the photos I was taking, and not so much, okay, we'll shoot this, but how can they get used best? And
Mm-hmm.
after 3 years, when my son was old enough to shove off my parents, I hit up my old action sports contacts, and they're at like Noveske Rifle Works or Silencer Co. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't, I grew up shooting guns and all that stuff. Sure, let's give it a go. And that was a lot of fun. It was really great, actually. Starting out like first client Noveske, great company. love them, love working with them.
Right on.
Um, and then I had friends that growing up that then ended up becoming team guys, being Navy SEALs, and so then it was just a matter of be like, hey, do you want to come play dress up on the weekend and hold this rifle? And so that kind of got me out there, getting having Noveski and then getting access to guys and gear that most people can't get access to. And I freelanced around there for a bit, working with agencies, and then started getting into more of the Walmart brand kind of side of things, such as like Federal, um, all that kind of stuff. But eventually, Clandestine Media hit me up. Owner Luke over there reached out to me, and then just been freelancing with them ever since. They eat most of my time nowadays. They keep me pretty busy. They've kind of grown a lot, but yeah, it's kind of how I ended up where I'm at right now.
Dude, that's crazy. That's a lifetime of work, man. Way to summarize that into to a few minutes. What was that like trying to? I mean, it's changed a lot. The industry's changed a lot since you've been working. What has it been like for you when you were just starting out in comparison to the stuff you're doing today?
Oh, I mean, it's insane. Like I still remember when I first started. You're working with DSLRs, and this was just when, in '05, it was just when finally digital had kind of started to circumvent film. I remember having professors in school that were saying like, oh, well, film's always going to be there. You can't beat, a 4 by 5 slide negative, the level of color and contrast and detail in it. And now you're just laughing like, haha, look now, old man. Just the camera technology and how it's changed, the sensors, how they've changed, the ISOs, where before, ISOs used to be garbage. But I think the big thing that has really, really changed is the software. And when it comes to editing, no longer, I think about the amount of hours wasted in my life tracing out along a mountain ridge line or something, trying to replace a sky, or going in and really painting things by hand in Photoshop on layer masks. And now you click a button and it does it for you. It's great. It's kind of made the process a lot easier.
Yeah, no kidding. Do you think? Take me through what that first Noveski shoot was like. So you mentioned that you had shotguns before, you grew up shooting guns, and then now you have a client. What was it like prepping for that first project in the 2A space?
It was interesting because it was my old boss at DC Shoes, Mike Allen, who's over at SoCal now. And he's like, you want to come take pictures of girls in bikinis in the woods shooting machine guns in full auto? And I was like, sure. And, I land up there at Medford. We drive over to Grants Pass, and about an hour and a half later, that's exactly what I was doing. It was like, okay, this is because I'd never really shot that much for ARs. It was growing up, it was kind of stereotypical guns that dad has, 30-06, 12 gauge, lever action, wheel guns, all this stuff. So getting into that space of ARs and it's been like, okay, no recoil, this thing shoots flat and is easy. Like, um, it it wasn't too much of a change, I don't think, compared to the action sports stuff when it comes to just the prep for setting something up. Also the timing that comes with
Mm-hmm.
this, like if you're photographing a firearm, we want the casing next to the rifle, to show that it's being put in use. Same thing like in the BMX days, like there's a certain moment you have to get within a trick. Otherwise, in any BMX rider's the trick's worthless. Like if they're doing a tail whip and the bike isn't completely 180 away from them. So a lot of it was also the timing. So it wasn't too big of a jump, going
Mm-hmm.
there.
And then from there, it was. I mean, it seems like so. We'll get into your Instagram in a little bit, and you can kind of see it. But from there, it becomes pretty much a normal client for you, right? So, what was the after that? What was kind of your thought? So you enjoy shooting it, right? So I guess did you see after that first shoot with Noveski an opportunity for you to like, hey, here's another niche for me to push into that's not being shot. So how I guess what I'm trying to say is like you have a fine arts or an artist background with your work, and that's clear in your stuff from the very beginning. So when you entered into the gun space, did you see an opportunity for you to bring a new look into that space based off of what's been done before, or were you just kind of just taking it one shoot at a time?
No, I mean, I definitely did when it came to the strobes and stuff. I mean, I guess I wasn't like at first super. I didn't see it as like this is the way to go, because at the time I was doing some stuff for Adidas, I was doing some stuff for
Mm-hmm.
Levi's, which funny enough, with Levi's, when they saw my Instagram, that got in the way of working with me. Um, but yeah, a lot of it was just basically the level of production when it came to strobes and bringing strobes out on location. That's always been something that I've enjoyed to do. Bringing that out, that heightened realism that comes to it, making it a little bit larger than life. A big heavy influence starting out was DEF CON, Berto, what he's done. So like that was where like seeing his earlier work was like, I want to make stuff like that. But then the problem was I did it too close to the point where if a lot of my shots from those days, people think it's actually him, not me. So that's
Right
what
on.
happens when you try to emulate somebody a little too hard. But I did see it as that. But as far as the technical depth of firearms and all that, when you get into it, I was used to I was used to going to trade shows. It was nothing new to me. But my first time at SHOT Show, I did what I always did, which is where you go around to every booth and you grab every catalog and you just go home and you sift through it and you're like, okay, what's everyone up to? What can I learn from what's going on here? How can I sort of build on what other people are doing? What does the space look like? And I
Mm-hmm.
came back away from that looking at my first SHOT Show experience like, well, it's all just the same photos of guys holding guns. I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of room for that of trying to reinvent the wheel, I guess. And so I didn't see too much room to push it. But then also nowadays I look around at some guys out there like Doug from Hollow Pointed, and I'm just like, wow, okay, you did figure out a new way to shoot guns in the studio. People are getting really creative with it nowadays. It's good to see.
Yeah, those guys. He's wicked talented, man. I
Yeah.
love that guy. Where do you draw your inspiration from? So I appreciate that you have kind of an art school background, artist background, but well, back then, where were you drawing inspiration from? And then today, where are you drawing your inspiration from?
Um, so it was kind of it was a question that one of my professors kind of posed in one of the classes. It was like, what is your subject matter? What is it that you were trying to communicate with a camera? Obviously, you chose a camera to say something to the world. What is it you're trying to say? And it messed with me for a very long time. Um, and it's basically just I like photographing my friends. That's what inspires me. And a lot of times, those friends, it doesn't have to be somebody lifelong. Like on a lot of these clandestine shoots, you're working very closely with guys, with a soft background where you're getting up at 3 a.m. and you're busting 18 hours, and it's very easy to get close to people then and
Mm-hmm.
just really become friends quickly. And it's always been a deep fascination with hearing these guys' stories, what they've been up to, seeing how they still push it today, even after the military, into new avenues. It's not like their whole life was the military guns. They find something else that's really inspiring and really motivating to do. So that's mostly where my inspiration comes from, is the people themselves.
Right on. Yeah, I love that. I think it's important to have people. I like doing studio product photography, but I like shooting people more than just staging a product. So that's awesome. Um, what are some of your challenges? What are some things that you're dealing with now or over the course of your career that have been challenges you've had to deal with?
I think the biggest one is definitely motivation and inspiration. Because after about 10 years of working in firearms, it's just kind of like, well, we've shot it all. So trying to find something new, when I've had the opportunities I've had shooting ODA guys doing over the beach kind of stuff, little birds rolling around abandoned nuclear power plants. And so that's where it's kind of been about what kind of fires me up. And I guess that's where I've looked more towards the humorous side of things, I guess, because I think about the humor that these guys have off camera, sort of what they do. And so that's where I kind of got more into the 3D a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to stuff is like I love working with helicopters. I love all these larger, expensive assets, but it's so much money, it's so much time and planning. Like there was probably 8 hours a couple weeks ago, and we did just in prepping for a Black Hawk just for one day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where 3D's kind of allowed me to get any stupid idea I have in my head, where I can make guys going through a shoot house, skateboarding. I can have Elon Musk hard styling in front of a cyber truck, that I've wrapped in multicam and thrown a minigun on. It's just that kind of stuff where I'm having more fun with it.
Cool. How long did it? How did you get plugged into the 3D, and then what was the process to learn how to do that?
Well, I mean, originally, like I said, it was just always the helicopters, and it was always
Mm-hmm.
I got into photoshopping them a lot in the backgrounds or compositing, shooting people inside the studio, and then maybe putting them like in a C-17 or something like that. But the most difficult and challenging part was trying to find a good reference photo where it matched the lighting, the perspective, and then I ended up doing a lot more having to like paint with light, whereas trying to match and blend things, and then all of a sudden it became like this isn't photography anymore. I'm more of a digital artist. I'm not enjoying this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where somebody had mentioned 3D. So that was all it was in the beginning, was just simply to render like something out in the background, whether it be inside of an airplane or helicopter in the background. I can match the lighting and then just take it from there. It was just a photo purpose. And it wasn't until I found an operator, like a 3D soldier I licensed online. Because that's the thing, when it comes to 3D, I just use my photo background. I don't model anything. I
Okay.
just license everything. So I found this character that was all set up, and I licensed it for what it cost, and I was looking through it and was like, oh, somebody has a friend with that, came in and was like, here's all my gear, here's all the name, because everything was broken out, it was accurately named. Um, and then I start running this character, my stuff, making him dance around for this TikTok over OPSEC video. And then the guy who made the character reached out. He's my friend Javier, and he's like, "No, I'm in Spain, and there's no guns allowed here. I'm just a huge gun nerd." And then that's where um, I was very amateurish at 3D. I still very much am, but he was able to kind of spin me up, and then we worked very closely together on creating some of the assets that we work with today.
That's awesome. What do you use? What soft? Can I ask what software you use? I know it's trade secrets and stuff, but
Oh no, I mean everybody either runs Blender or Unreal Engine 5. I'm on Blender because my friend Javier forbids me from using Unreal Engine. So Blender, yeah.
yeah, I've goofed around with Blender in the past. I've got it downloaded. I just haven't had the time to jump in and try to like get it figured out again. But it's a pretty powerful software for free, right? Because it's still free to download, or do you have to have a paid version now?
No, I mean they always complain that I think it's, they say like 99% of Blender users don't contribute to Blender. You're supposed to donate. But yeah, it's still free. And you're right. Like the level of things crammed into there, from motion tracking to, automating things through noise, and how you can take a flat texture of just a picture of rocks, and then through displacement, it just lifts out the rocks. What you can get in there for free, but that's what you're saying is always the biggest obstacle. Someone's like, okay, let's get this. But it's a very, very complex software that is
Mm-hmm.
not as accessible and requires you watching like 4 to 5 tutorials from 4 to 5 people on one thing before you find the one thing that works for you. It's very time consuming.
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of time to try to learn how to use that program. I
Yeah.
It's on the list of things to try to learn for me, just because I love doing the 3D modeling side of things. Right, I was big into AutoCAD, like CAD stuff for product design and all that in the past. And it was fun being able to bring those models into Blender and kind of animate them and stuff. So I like it, but it's just been, again, it's changed so much even when I was goofing off with it, that it's just like you have to kind of start from scratch. At least that's my perspective of it, having to try to jump back into it. You've been doing this stuff for a long time. What kind of keeps you in it? What is getting you fired up these days about what you're doing? I mean, the 3D is big, but beyond that, what keeps you in this industry?
I mean, like I said, it's a lot of just those experiences going out, just basically clandestine media group, the shoots that we do. Like the it's great working with their team. The organization that goes into these things is insane. It's impressive to watch because I have the easy job of they fly me in and they're like, okay, there's that situation, go photograph it. But the time it takes to, rent some place where you're going to be able to do explosive breaching, find the guys that, you can trust enough to build these charges, figure out minimum safe distance and all this stuff, getting all the gear out there. And then just that drive of go, 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 but then also, um, a big part too is watching the other guys work. I know you had Clayton Cassidy on, like
Mm-hmm.
he is a human Labrador on set where I feel just beat down, tired, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. He's like, hey, I got this great idea. What about this? What about this? What about this? Like it's so good working with him and just trying to feed off that insane amount of energy he has naturally. That's mostly what keeps me going.
Yeah. What do you think of the young guys that are jumping into this industry? Because they're coming off, they're looking at guys like you and they're pulling inspiration from your work. What do you think about some of the talent we got coming into this industry?
I think that's backwards. I think I'm trying to pull inspiration from them. Like I said, just look at some of them. Just like, okay, it's things that I thought there was no other way to really pull off. It is just, I'm constantly surprised by that, especially when it comes to a lot of the studio stuff, when it comes to a
Hmm.
lot of how clean and polished a lot of this is, compared to when I first started. Like we were talking about where, okay, looking at SHOT Show, the level of detail and attention and quality just wasn't there. And nowadays, seeing guys that are really, really, really pushing it at the age they're at and thinking they still have that whole career ahead of them, it's great to see. Kind of, it's progressed past that, past the days of people that just took their entire Instagram page was guns floating in white with very poorly done drop shadow.
Hmm. I wonder where it's gonna go. Because even me, I'm kind of like, man, there's only so many ways you can shoot a gun. It seems like, right? But every time I get onto Instagram and I see something coming from some of these guys, I'm like, wow, I didn't think of that before. So yeah, super cool. What do you think about some of the AI tools? How do you feel about AI and how it's being used?
Uh, so I run it a lot for what I do. I just
Hmm.
don't show or post it just because it's terrifying. I think I don't like that it's happening. That's for sure. I've had discussions with guys at larger marketing agencies, much more in the know when it comes to tech and stuff than me. And they've said 3 to 5 years there's going to be no new photographers. It's that it is coming for that low level baseline. But I think it's also, one of my friends put it best. He's like, getting mad about AI is like getting mad at a calculator. You have to kind of accept the fact that it is here. And it's not going to go anywhere. Companies are going to use it because I've even had, friends that have brands they're running and they're like, hey, how do I just take a picture of one of my products and then put it on a beach or put it out in the woods or put it on a range surrounded by shell casings? And you're like, okay, yeah, here's how you do that. And now you don't need a photographer anymore. So it's just simply the industry changing again. And
Hmm.
so I think it's about being more connected with those tools because it's being a creative, being an artist shouldn't be focused on the tool itself, on what you have. Like I remember reading a book in school, it was required reading material, but they were interviewing a photographer that was working at a college, and one of the questions was, um, what do you say to somebody who's a photographer that wants to come to your plan, your curriculum? And he had said, well, I can't teach them because they've chosen the tool before they've chosen the art. The more we shouldn't be tied to these things, we should just be tied to whatever keeps us creative. And I
Hmm.
don't feel like AI is at the point where it's introducing any new ideas where it's circumvented us just yet. It's working with AI is more about curation. So
Hmm.
you still have to have that eye for what actually looks good, because I do see some guys in firearms that are running AI, and then it's like, well, this composition isn't the best, and there's things that stand out. So you have to have still that eye for the sort of stuff that you have to develop just by simply shooting on your own.
Yeah, that's good. I had a similar experience because I agree. I agree 100% with everything you just said. That is my sentiment exactly when it comes to AI. Where I had lunch with one of the marketing directors I used to work with not too long ago. And we were talking about AI. This was when it first came out. So that there was that one week. I want to say it was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, where all of a sudden everybody's Instagram feeds were like those illustration self portraits, right?
Yep.
And I was like, right away, I'm like, I didn't dig it just because I'm like, I have friends who are illustrators who have worked their entire lives to get to the point of being able to create those, who just had their jobs taken away in
Yeah.
in 24 hours. You don't need illustrators anymore. And so I was talking that through with this marketing director I worked with, and he was like, yeah, he's like, but you know what, Josh, is like, this is the future. So learn to use it to your advantage. You don't have to like it, but learn how to use the tool so you can not get left behind. Because if you choose not to, you'll probably be left behind. That's interesting though. I hadn't heard about the no new photographer kind of idea. It makes sense though. I mean, I think I was telling my wife the other day, I think it's funny that we invent AI, this technology, and the first thing that it does is start coming after the creative and free thinkers, the artists of the world, getting replaced by computers. Which I think their artists will. Well, we're creators. We're going to create. It's just going to. I'm interesting to see what kind of subculture or what direction humans take creative work because of the advent of AI. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's difficult to see which direction it's going to go in, but like everything you're saying, yeah, we're like you don't want to see people that have spent 10, 20, 30 years refining themselves, making themselves a master of what they do, be replaced. And like you said, 24 hours, it's happened so fast. And then it's also just spitting so much up so much more faster. Like you look at what Runway is pulling off nowadays with the image to video, and it's like, okay, well now video is being targeted as well. And
yeah.
even where you can AI such as Static 11, I think it's Static 1111, but yeah, where you have it on your own computer and you can run it by basically putting in someone's face, 50 to 300 times in photos from every single angle, and then it then can recreate that to where all of a sudden you've trained AI to make, Joe Biden chasing a bunch of kids at a playground as they run from him screaming or something. So
Yeah. So the question is, how good is your eye? Can you recognize what is and what isn't reality anymore? Which is that's the freaky thing, right? I don't trust anything that I see on the news,
same. So I got trust issues.
right? Yeah, no kidding. Where do you see yourself going next? I mean, you've been doing again, going back to you've been doing this for a while. What's your trajectory for the next 3 to 5 years?
Um, So, but I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years well, 18 of being on the road and flying and stuff like that, and having, wife and two kids. It's definitely a lot harder heading out the door nowadays than where it was just me and, just my son who could leave my parents, having that more family aspect. I still want to keep taking photos, but I've kind of brought it down to one or two shoots a month. And so that's mostly where I've transitioned to 3D. And then I've been learning a lot about kind of running a business from the owner at Clandestine because I've never had to do that managing people, and that's where he's kind of been working with me on that. So I have my team of 3D guys, um, and I want to keep growing that kind of, and to where I can learn to kind of steer a ship more than being in the trenches. And that's where it's not something that I'm great at. And that's where it's been about working with people, like understanding, like, okay, you might not be what I need right now, but I can get you there. I just have to go through these steps and I have to believe in you. I got to get you paid on time. I have to give you everything that you possibly need. And I mean, after working in this industry for so long, where you're constantly like, okay, well, so tell me about this product. Oh, just go do your thing. Just go do what you do. Well, I don't know if you need stuff where it's going to be subject oriented left, leaving space for copy on the right. I don't know if there's going to be a focus on social media more so than this stuff. I don't know any of this stuff, like not getting details. And then also not getting paid for 30, 60, 90 days, being able to, manage my team and try and fill all those gaps and fix that.
Do you find this is a question that I've had from a couple of guys on the Instagram feed has been the differences between working with a company like an Adidas or DC Shoes or some of the bigger product manufacturing companies kind of more in mainstream versus working with gun industry because I think the gun industry guys are like that. Here's the gun, just do your thing. And then we'll figure out the details after the fact, which makes it very hard because you're like, well, how do for one, pricing is hard. The ask is hard because you don't know how many assets, you don't know what they're going to be used for. I find that is very common in the gun industry in comparison to working with a marketing director or a creative director from a larger company that's like, no, here's exactly what we need. Here's how much, figuring out pricing. Have you noticed that in your experience?
Oh, 100%. I think it's just mostly too, it's the places for us to consume imagery on a daily basis has drastically increased, where that then has changed the needs that need to get filled because there's so many different needs to get filled. It's difficult for somebody to rein that in.
Yeah.
I've done shoots uh, probably about like 8 years ago, 7 years ago, firearm shoots where I have a creative director sitting over my shoulder, and he's given me a 13-page brief where he's even mocked up the shot, the one shot that he needs for the ad, and he's checking like every three shots, and he's basically being the creative, and I'm in between him and the image. I'm interpreting what he says, being like, okay, well, I need it more like this, and I'm adjusting it, having that level of specificity where it's like, I need this one shot, get it just like this, as opposed to, well, we need to exist as a brand for the next 2 quarters off this, and we don't know what the next 2 quarters look like. So
Yeah, no kidding. Do you think it's important for brands? I was talking about this to a buddy of mine where he shoots weekly. I think he does 2 shoots a week for a lot of his clients. And I was like, I don't think that I told him, I'm like, first off, I don't know that you need to shoot that often. I think if you had a well planned shoot, you could get enough content that'll last you at least a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. Do you think it matters which way is there advantages, disadvantages? What's your opinion on that?
I feel like um, it depends on what you need or what the client needs exactly, because the biggest issue when it comes to this stuff is, uh, when someone's like, "Hey, we only need 10 photos a month.
Mm-hmm.
So just 10 photos a month, what's that going to cost?" Well, the problem when we say something like that, when it's talking about the number of times you have to head out the door, the issue is that some of it is luck and some of it is just finding for looking for and searching for that perfect composition. Photography is the gift of hindsight. It's like being a crime scene photographer where you're sort of searching, scooping up all the options. And so that's where sometimes some people, if it takes them a couple of days, but I feel like it's better to probably just condense it down and strike into one and just plan out one big day, because then you
Mm-hmm.
have one big day for editing, 2 big days for editing, and just knock out more of quantity that you can and try and pull from that. But I guess also it depends too on like how much level of production that you're going to put into that. How much are you having to go get locations? Are you having to get specific kit? Are you having to get, a specific feel for this lighting? I guess it kind of depends.
Yeah. So what you're saying is there's no right or wrong answer.
Well, it depends on the specifics that you get from the clients like we're talking about. That's very
Absolutely.
difficult.
Absolutely. You got to figure it out. Cool, man. So let's jump into some of your work. So I've got your Instagram up here, and I got it all the way down at the very first post.
Oh boy.
So this will be fun. Can you see this?
Yep.
All right, very bottom, first photo, number
Yeah.
one.
Yep. I learned to be a dad.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed when I was going through your feed was how important your family is to you, which I think is awesome. Because there's a lot of shots of you with your kids, which I think is great. So let's go. This is kind of talk about this one. Tell us about this. This is a third photo.
I don't even really remember too much about this. I'm guessing it's on my Fuji X100 or something. I honestly couldn't tell you. It was so long ago.
No worries. What was the first camera that you kind of got it started with? So you're going to school. Um, where did you start out with gear?
My first camera was a Nikon D50, uh, and it was back when Nikon was shooting CCD sensors, so they were way behind on Canon. I sort of stuck with Nikon throughout the ages there until action sports, and I got to D3s. And then finally, I made the jump to Sony after an assistant showed up one day. I just bought Nikon D850, and he shows me his A7 III, and I was like, "You gotta be kidding me! This thing's half the price of mine." Oh, there, the old X Pro. Still have those. Love those. Yes, this is mostly cycling days. I was doing a lot of that fixed gear track bike stuff. This was when,
Some of your stuff right there.
yeah, that's when I was still shooting film. There's that Mamiya 7 II. I missed that thing, medium format rangefinder.
Mm.
But yeah, it was a
Do
lot of
you
track bike
still
stuff. But
go
I'm sorry,
ahead?
go ahead.
Do you still shoot on film on occasion, or are you all digital now?
I got my Mamiya RB67 working. I thought it was working, and so I got all geared up and I brought it out and shoot, and then it wasn't working. So I haven't had too much time to jump back into it. I've done Silencer Co shoots though, where they're like, "Hey, we want everything shot on film. Here's a like on House of Blood. Get after it." So, um, which at first feels kind of intimidating, but you kind of figure out like, okay, it's just the same. You're still not checking shots anyways after every shot in digital.
Yeah, there's a gun. That's like the
That's
first one.
yeah, medium format scan.
Wow, cool.
My stupid 1911.
hmm Medium format. That's something I haven't gotten into. Medium or large format stuff. Is the workflow kind of the same, or is it just times 10 because you're working with so much more information?
The reason why you go up in that and why you go into larger formats, medium and large format, is because you have less shots that you can take and it's more
hmm
expensive. Like I used to carry that RB67 with me in Red Bull days, and I would have that on my side, and I would shoot so much with it that when I go into the film lab, I'd have a Ziploc bag after Ziploc bag filled with 220 exposed and have to be like, hey, so can we talk about another payment plan this week? Um, and then it gets even more like large format's better, probably a better way to look at it. Like large format, you can only go out with 4 or 5, film holders that you might
Hmm.
have. You only have like 4 or 5 shots, maybe 10 at the most, and then you're spending 30 minutes in pitch black developing just 4 shots. And if you take a picture in color with one of those things,
Hmm.
that's $14 when you hit that shutter. So the
Dang.
level of, it's no longer this click, 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 click. It's a lot more attention to nailing exactly what you want in the shot. It slows you down, which then informs your process when it comes to digital.
Hmm. And then I think what's the mostly for print, right? Applications blowing stuff up. Is that the why you would want to bring something like that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A 4 by 5 inch negative, 8 by 10 inch negative, like that's where you hold that out. And especially if it's slide film, you get to see exactly what it is you shot. It records color, contrast, all that much bigger because it's or better because it's such a much more larger surface that's being recorded. God, I don't
Yeah.
miss these days taking pictures of guys in spandex.
Yeah, man. A lot of cycling. So do you cycle, or is this just like? I mean, I would assume that you would. You're.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I rode track bikes, brakeless track bikes around. I traveled around the country, hang out with bike messengers through San Francisco, Seattle, New York City.
Yep.
Got into road bikes at about this time, and I switched into mountain bikes. And then I finally just got my oldest, my 12-year-old, going on a mountain bike, and so we've been getting after. I can finally circle back
Dude,
to riding bikes, which I've always loved. But
right on. Yeah, my son is 8, and he's getting to the point where I can start including him in some stuff, some of the hobbies that I like to do, and that's been awesome to
you
be
got
able
him
to
into
get.
guns yet?
Yeah, yeah. We started shooting 22. I got a little suppressed SPR 22 that he likes to shoot, and he's getting man. We took him out this last weekend out into the woods, and he's getting pretty proficient at being able to hit a tin can at about 30 to 40 yards away. So
Nice.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. I think that
Yeah.
he's getting into it. So
I messed up with mine. My friend put it as you ruined the experience that we've all had, for him, the going to dad's closet to find the shoebox with the 1911 with just him coming out in all the clandestine shoots over the years and stuff at the house. And
oh
his,
yeah,
his idea of what's normal with firearms is very skewed.
yeah. So you gotta pull out all the big guns to really impress him, is what you're saying. That's
Oh no,
awesome.
he's got it completely backwards. Like we did a shoot with San Diego Sheriff SWAT, and he was all impressed. They gave him stickers. They let him fly around the Bearcat, get in the helicopter, and he's asking me, he's like, how many sheriff SWAT guys are there? I was like, I don't know, 30 or so. I'm not sure. I'm so lucky. Like, why? I was like, I get to hang out with SWAT. I was like, you hang out with team guys, with Navy SEALs every week. He's like, yeah, but they're nerds. They're dorks. Those guys were way cooler.
Oh my
Like,
gosh, that's. Oh, I'm sure they love to hear that. SWAT guys probably felt pretty good. That's
yeah.
awesome. I love that. Hey, what's up, guys? We are halfway through this week's episode of Guns and Cameras, and I have just removed carefully the projectile from this 50 caliber bullet. Look at the size of this thing, you guys. This is Desert Eagle. Big, man. You thought 45 was big. Try getting shot by one of those. That's a hollow point. That would suck too. Anyway, we're going to dump this powder out. Like I said, we're halfway through this week's episode of Guns and Cameras, and that means it's time to tell you it's been brought to you by 1156 Productions and by Tokens of Valor. Tokens of Valor is my boutique jewelry company where I take ballistic components like brass and copper and sterling silver to create one-of-a-kind, hand-forged, wearable works of art. If you're interested in having a piece made for yourself, look me up on Instagram at Tokens of Valor. Give me a follow, send me a DM, and we'll get something started for you guys. Also, fun fact, you guys, we have a brand store now that's live. I got the patches up there now. So if you go to 1156productions.com, navigate up to the menu navigation, click on brand store. There's a whole bunch of t-shirts, tank tops, stickers, patches, all Guns and Cameras, branded. So if you want to support the channel, I'd appreciate it. Pick something up there. But yeah, now that all that's out of the way, we are talking with Mr. Matt Lingo. Matt is, like I said earlier, a legendary photographer in the 2A space. Crazy talented, has some wicked stories. and a lot of great expertise to share with you guys. So while I get back into, playing with some gunpowder here, you guys enjoy the rest of this week's episode of Guns and Cameras. One of the things that I love about Instagram and going back through the feeds is being able to, we're going to zip forward here in a second. But one of the things I love about this application is just being able to do this, right? Because the stuff that you're posting now is so much different than this, right?
Still a long thing. This is ages ago.
Yeah, still have a little bit of cycling. We got a lot, like we got some AR. So you must have already started with Noveski at this point.
Yeah, this was hauling off, like I said, friends, to go take pictures of them. This was as I was exiting cycling and then kind of just then circling back into
Yeah.
freelance work.
And you have always used strobes from the very beginning, correct?
Um, yeah, I got pretty into it just because my school had like an $80,000 photo studio where
Yep.
everything was on like arms that you could just pull down. And so every lab day that we had, where the studio was open for 12 hours, the first year that was open there, or first semester was open, there was no studio classes. I just went in there every Friday for 12 hours, just shooting again and again and again and loved it.
That's awesome. Do you recommend, like, I know there's a big kind of anti-school vibe that's happening now. Do you recommend that? Did you get, like, was positive experience for you? Would you recommend it for others?
Positive
What do
experience
you
for
think?
me, but it sounds very much hit or miss nowadays. I was just talking to someone yesterday where
Mm.
they were like, "Oh yeah, this school's very anti-AI and refuses to accept it." I was like, "That's stupid." Whereas other people I've talked to, they talk about there's a whole class dedicated. I just like we were saying earlier, like it's important to understand what's coming. You have to know that, and the school will be doing a disservice by not giving that to you.
Yeah. I think, when was this? When was this picture? I saw this picture scrolling down.
I hated that setup.
Yeah. This was 2016. You may have one. I think you may have been one of the first guys. I don't want to say that. You probably one of the earliest guys that were actually using actual tubes through a lens to capture night vision stuff in this kind of a rig. Because this is way back.
Yeah, but I
Uh,
quickly learned the problem with that though is especially when you're moving, you are
yeah.
having to focus the nods as well as focusing the lens, which is where I learned it's just a lot
Hmm.
easier to slap a cell phone on that thing and not run. It's probably a 5D Mark II. No, it's a 5D Mark III. Was
Yeah.
that in those days? Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. And we're about to fast forward here again, real quick, up to the kind of some of the more recent stuff. What has
Yeah.
been to date, as we're kind of ripping up here? What has been one of your more memorable shoots that you've worked on?
Uh, Probably first time in the first Black Hawk that we did. That's always going to be my favorite.
Mm,
There's nothing like sitting in one of those things, slick with no seats and doors open and just strapped in with, you and 10 of your buddies, and then just all of a sudden looking off to the left and being like, that's the ground and there's the sky. But because it's cranking so hard, you're compressed into the floor.
mm,
And just the force of those things, the power of them, it's so much fun. But I mean, we've also some locations we've gone to, like there's an abandoned nuclear factory, GTI, that we've used a lot.
hmm.
That's been a blast. Oh, go back down a little bit. Okay, so Mike Allen's skateboarding, go back. It's a little bit further up, right there. He's
Right
doing the
here.
tray flip. Yeah, that one was always fun because the amount of people that thought we did that in public cracks me up because it's definitely a very bad composite on my part. But
No, I think it's cool because I think we're up to the point now in your feed where we start you you kind of take this shift of going from very like in camera, right? Here's a click, here's the photo, to a lot more of the compositing, right?
when you're looking at like, so if you go, well, probably the best example, scroll up a little bit further, and I'll show you what kind of where was okay, so right there with my son with the ninjas, this is what would happen a lot with the composites. What got me into it was he would tell me, I want to make movies. And I was like, I can't make movies. I don't have time for that. But you come up with the movie poster and I will shoot it. So I was like, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to fight zombie ninjas in space. I was like, sure, absolutely. So I had a buddy that had a ninja costume and all this stuff. And we I had couch cushions out. That's where I'm having them jump and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. Yeah, but we've made dozens of posters, and that's what a big drive for it was showing him like because we try in my household like try and push creativity, and that's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of it with the kids is being like any stupid idea you have, we're gonna make.
Yep.
Just to like not force them to jump into that path, but just show them like if you think of something, we can do it. We can pull it
You can do
off.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I was gonna say the movie poster thing is it stays really consistent going up because there's some composites up here where you're like that feels very movie poster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm actually working on one right now.
no, that's what's up.
Yeah, because the every shoot I let the guys tell me the name of or figure out basically what the movie poster is they want. I do the same thing that I did with my kids, kind of like so they come up to like one of them for Winter Warfare, they wanted to be hunting Yetis, Zero Dark Yeti. Out
Cool.
at Dillon Air in Arizona, they wanted to be raiding an abandoned gold mine with the Huey helicopter kind of thing. So whatever idea they got, we do.
Yeah. And I think that it's about at this point where, because I remember this pumpkin photo, where your work starts getting just really a lot more. You start to kind of develop your look and your vibe, right? Because we end up, and I know that sounds kind of funny. I mean, talking to an experienced photographer, trying to say that, right? Because I've only been shooting, I think, for 10 years, so I'm not even halfway caught up to where you're at. But being able to look through your feed, you can kind of see where how you've changed and how you've started to push things from in your work, right? And this is probably I think your first post was in 2013, so this is only the last what 7 I'm terrible at math like 13 years or so, almost 12 years
Yeah.
of your work. So there's a lot that's not even represented here in your feed, but like just the way the color changes, the contrast changes, composition changes, compositing, and then the addition of 3D stuff. Because I know further down the road, like look at this, this is so totally movie poster.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I feel like every year I'm always trying to get better. I'm never that was like in school I learned that from kind of my main Photoshop instructor was that
Mm-hmm.
like, he's an older guy, but watching was like, how do you keep up with this? Like, how do you constantly learning all this new stuff? He's like, you just don't ever let the old man in. That's how you get old. You just constantly
Mm-hmm.
stay up to date. You always want to keep moving. Like one of my friends, in every cubicle he works at, that he always prints out in a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper. The most
Mm-hmm.
dangerous phrase in the human language is because we've always done it this way. So that's
Mm,
where it's about like, okay, what can I learn? How can I keep pushing myself? What can I do that hasn't been done yet?
right. I love that you. I love your double exposures. You got some great. I know these are probably composites, but I like the double exposure. Like this is 5 years ago, 2020.
Well, that was COVID,
Yeah.
and I got to do a Sicario poster for RE Factor,
Oh,
and
cool.
we couldn't go shoot, so
Mm,
I had to pull old assets. So actually, Christian there on his knees is in the snow, and I photoshopped him with MS-13 tattoos on his face, and then I
nice.
just pulled people over and shot him in the studio, try and make it, and not my best work by any means, but it was still
No.
fun to shoot.
Yeah. What was that like for you during 2020? San Diego, I love San Diego. I go there as often as I can. Um, but San Diego was one of the places in California that kind of was pushing back a lot on the legislation for COVID stuff. What was it like for you being down there around that
One
time?
of the best times of my life. I was
Yeah.
out at the range constantly. Just always, that's when I really actually probably started shooting the most with guns, really getting
Mm,
after it. Working with a lot of the team guys, special forces guys, learning from them, getting better at it. It's Ken Block. Yeah.
R.I.P. Man.
Yeah.
That was tough. That was I looked yeah Ken Block man. Growing up watching him drive cars. That was
And he was just it's so inspiring to work with that dude constantly pushed. Even on that shoot, it was really cool because he was screen printing um some stuff and he was sitting there talking to me about how he started at a community college here in San Diego
mm,
making t-shirts. And that's how he learned screen printing was just at a community college and that's how he started DC shoes and just seeing how he never slowed down, he never missed a beat. He was always the one pushing everybody the hardest.
yeah. I always thought I had a buddy in high school that was he was a semi-professional or professional wakeboarder, and big into jet skis, and he got killed in an accident. And I was like, it was tough, but at least he went out doing something he cared about. And I feel like Ken Block. I never met, didn't know Ken, just a fan, but I feel like at least he went out doing something he cared about. So
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask or think about somebody if they had a way, if they had to choose,
yeah,
you can't figure, or you figure they'd be okay with that.
yeah,
As awkward of a question as it is.
right. Who has been somebody that you worked with on a shoot? Doesn't have to be a celebrity, but somebody that you know maybe ended up being. I know, speaking of Ken, I'm sure he's one of the guys. But who's been somebody that kind of was like, yeah, this guy's actually pretty cool to work with in real life?
Um, hmm.
Or is there a person that was kind of like, do you have at this point any kind of, what do they call it? Starstruckedness?
I mean, I guess I'm not saying anything because by and large, a lot of the people that I've worked with when it came to action sports stuff, I don't want to say names or anything. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, you're not at all like you are on that TV show, huh?
Mm,
Um, but I mean, probably the one time where I was nerding out really hard was Danny Way when I look over and he's next to me in a mini ramp as I'm shooting, and he
mm-hmm.
was totally cool with me walking over and being like, "Hey man, I just want to say like huge fan, been following you since I was a kid," and he was just like, "That's really cool." He tolerated me doing that. But yeah, Danny Way was probably the one where really I was pretty starstruck. Oh, we're getting into 3D a little bit
I was
there.
gonna say, yeah, here we're getting into some 3D stuff.
Oh, actually, go back down a little bit so you can see. It's going to be on the right hand side. So bottom right, the guy's taking a knee with the helo. So this was
Right
the
here.
first time, well, one of the first times where I really kind of got into this, taking a helo and then
Mm-hmm.
putting it in the back and then using a lot of brushes in Photoshop, doing different levels with the rotor wash and then blurring it out and then masking it around them. That one was really fun to make.
Yeah, and it looks really good. Little birds.
There's
Dig.
actually just one in that shot. I just was shooting so much, I just put the second one in just to make it look like for the VI, for the vehicle introduction.
Right. Dude, we're getting close to the top here. That's dope.
Yeah, that's when I was kind of just messing around, doing more of the UFO paranormal stuff, I guess. Um, wasn't as focused on the military stuff for this, so
Yeah, if you could pick, if it was up to you, it was like, hey, Matt, you have full creative control to do a shoot. What would you shoot?
probably something like go back down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like the SR-71, this kind of stuff, the bottom left there, like this is the kind of stuff that I would really, really want to do where so the shoes are 3D scanned.
Mm-hmm.
They aren't real, but being able to photograph something and then taking the time in 3D and Photoshop to really go in and really kind of work something. Because my biggest inspiration when it comes to everything is I never served in the military. I don't have a frame of reference for that. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's been comic books, it's been movies, it's been video games, that sort of thing when it comes to these things. So trying to bring maybe more of that movie aspect to it in like a bigger level production, and blending in those assets and locations that you can't usually get. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah. I was gonna ask if comic books were a source of inspiration for you, because I
It's
feel like that's
huge.
that's really starting to, like, even in some of your later work, like later being latest work, it's really starting to kind of come. It's more visible in your photography and your composite work that you know comic book might have been something that inspired you.
Specifically Black Powder Red Earth. I don't have you ever seen that comic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that they nobody has nailed the aesthetic of violence in my opinion, as well as Black Powder Red Earth. Those guys crush it.
Mm-hmm. So when a brand approaches you, do you find now that people are hiring you for your look? Like, how often do you get called up and say, "Hey Matt, we have a shoot, but this is what I want it to look like," versus we're after your flavor. Do you find that there's a lot of creative direction for you even still, or do you find that they leave that up to you a lot of the time?
It's honestly, it's just up to me a lot of the time. Um, I don't really get too much direction outside of here's the end use for these assets. We need 30% for web e-blast, 70% for social or something like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this was where I had to go pull all my film scans because I realized that all my scans were sitting on CDs and that
Mm-hmm.
no computers have CD drives anymore. So that's was like, oh crap, I had to go buy a CD drive and get them all
Yep.
off there and upload them to the cloud because I'm not going to be able to do that later.
Yeah, I
So
was gonna say we've seen that picture before. That's awesome. Yeah, that's been weird to kind of live through. Has been that change in technology,
yeah,
like going from cars with cassette to then cars with CDs to now cars with no CDs again. To see technology kind of come forward and then be antiquated has been a wild experience. Like right now, I'm working on trying to find a way to help my parents get all of their VHS tapes scanned over into digital so they can watch, some of the old family movies, and that's been a process.
I'm right there with you. My dad just gave me my great grandfather's 8 millimeter like recordings and all that stuff. So I got to figure out how to get 8 millimeter scanned.
Yeah, man, look at this, dope.
Yeah.
8 millimeter, yeah, I don't. That'd be a trick. This is the one you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, I think
Cybertruck
it's
wrapped in multicam.
yeah, because I was looking at just driving down the street. I was like, that thing's stupid. How would I make it cool? It's like, oh, let's wrap it in multicam, toss a minigun mount on it from an MH60 and rip the back of an M Razor off and throw it in the bed.
Yep, went to the Demolition Ranch Range Day in Texas last year, and or I think it was last year, last fall might have been, and they had a wrapped Cybertruck with I think they had a 50 cal in the back.
Hell yeah.
It was fun. Yeah, they're finding ways to make those things look cool. Look at this.
Yeah, that was a buddy that passed away suddenly. I made that for like a t-shirt design using once again
Mm-hmm.
AI and all that stuff and
It's very
pictures of
He-Man,
him.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Great work, Matt. It's awesome. I love your stuff. I draw
Thanks.
inspiration from it regularly. What has been, so this is a question I ask every guest. It's the oh shit moment question. You've done a lot of crazy stuff in your career. What has been, it could be a good moment, could be a bad moment, but we all have them creatively. What is your oh shit moment?
Hard drives aren't what they used to be, that's for sure. Um, it was my very first Red Bull job, and I was still running gun, very much kind of broke. I was out
Mm,
at Tehachapi at Woodward. I just finished shooting. Um, and I didn't have a laptop. I had my iMac that I was hauling around the road with me,
mm-hmm.
and the hard drive started to crash, and I could see what was happening, and so I luckily I pulled off just the Red Bull photos, and then I lost everything else.
Oh, man.
Um, yeah, I've had some catastrophic hard drive crashes. I shot band promos for a band in LA where they lit themselves on fire, special effects studio. Next day, hard drive crash. I lost it all.
Oh, man.
DC Shoes tour, 2 weeks on the road, and I was backing up every 3 days, but I still managed to lose a lot of good photos because of hard drive crashes. I guess I didn't really learn my lesson at all. Luckily, the technology has gotten better and saved me from myself. So,
What is, you haven't had to have the conversation with clients, or have you, since you've had a lot of hard drive crashes of being like, hey, that photo that was awesome, it's gone now? Have you had to do that?
no, because I mean, that's the thing. Like, in a clandestine shoot, we might get, we might start at 4:30 and then we're going to be shooting all day and then we get back at 10:30. But it's like Matthew, Clayton, and I are clearing cards onto the computer and then backing up on a hard drive and then still keeping everything on the card. So you are triple backed up.
Yeah.
Because yeah, there's no room for that. If someone's flying you out and spending $100,000 on a shoot and you're just like, yeah, that's professionals don't work that way.
No, redundancy. Redundancy is important. That's one of the things
Absolutely.
that got hammered into me when I was in art school was like triple backup at least. Three different places. Keep it safe. What is some advice that you could give to people who are just starting out, maybe buying their first camera, haven't been impacted by AI enough yet to want to not take photography or not take photos? What would you tell them? What's some
Uh,
advice you would give?
Shoot every day, constantly create. And don't be afraid. Like I think that's probably one of my biggest hangups is I don't post enough to Instagram. I don't share enough of my work. Is constantly create and constantly put it out there. I was listening to a guy talk about this the other day in a post on Instagram. It was really good, where he was saying that like it's about creating such a large body of work very early on. The more you shoot, the more you create things, then you can kind of start funneling down. Okay, here's all these pictures, but these ones are good. Let's make more pictures like that. Then these ones are good, and then you can kind of find yourself a little bit more as an artist. Um, then that's just going to constantly by or be created by you creating work and then not being afraid if it's bad and people see it, being like understanding like I'm going to make mistakes, this is going to be a learning process. Because the more you can kind of then finalize who you are, it's, you know, if you start condensing it down, once you really figure out what you're going to shoot, it's like an hourglass. It then just expands out. Once you really figure out, here's the core of me, here's what I'm all about, here's how I see things, it opens up so many more doors for you. Um, and so by it's easy to say, you know, hey, we get busy. Um, but if you force yourself to shoot constantly and post every day, it's really going to jump you out there a lot more. And companies will see that. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
always one of the biggest things you can tell by how probably active somebody as a photographer is. Like, are you posting? Are you sharing work? Are you interested in the act of creating and showing other people? Sort of.
Yeah. If you had to do it all again, if you were starting where today, let's say you were just starting today and you wanted to shoot guns, do you think you'd keep on in this niche, or do you think you'd change it up and do
Oh
something
no,
else?
100%. And this has been so much fun. I mean, it's one thing working with guys like Ken Block. You know, don't get me wrong, like he's great, but you know, really, it's never having served in the military, never having any of those experiences myself, hearing these stories from these guys and just thinking, thank God we have you, because there's like what they put themselves through. And for just saying like no thanks, you know, for looking from anybody, just like no recognition um, there's some real heroes out there, and it's the guys that aren't out there, that aren't writing books, that aren't on podcasts, the ones that don't have a bunch of awards or medals. There's some guys that have done some insane stuff and don't want anything from anyone. So no, I mean that's been like I said, my focus has always been my subject matter is my friends, and I've definitely made some of my best friends in my life here in this industry, and I wouldn't change that for anything.
That's awesome. We're getting kind of close to. We got maybe another 10, 15 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long because I know time is money, and you got a lot of. You're short on time with the 3D stuff. But let's talk a little bit about equipment, right? So, what's your everyday carry? What's in your camera bag? And then, do you carry a gun? Do you have an EDC? Can you do that in California?
Um, the gun one's going to be a little bit shorter answer. So you can get concealed carry finally now. But it was a joke because they took so long to process your concealed carry permits that judge said finally, if you show that you applied for it, you can get one.
Nice.
Um, I haven't gotten my concealed carry. I'm not a very good gun dude because my mindset with guns is a lot like my camera gears or
Yeah.
my camera gear. I have stock Gen 3 Glock 19. That's my favorite, and I haven't touched anything on it. I probably put about 25,000 rounds through it, but I just enjoy like the working with it. Once I got my bison belt set up, taking classes, we're running drills with it. You know, coming from the Vesky, I'd always just had my Vesky Infidel. I love that thing, but getting a feel for pistol was so much fun. I don't have as much time to shoot, especially when having two kids in the house and the travel job.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, I treat guns the same way I kind of treat cameras. So I've had the same Sony A7 III for probably 7 years, and this thing's beat the hell. The screens don't really work too well. The dials are all crunchy. Um, but that's just because I don't know, I see it as a tool. I
Mm-hmm.
actually finally upgraded 2 weeks ago. I got one of these A9 threes because
Oh,
we were
nice.
doing uh, a breaching shoot, the explosive breaching shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And the A7 III was what I had. Other guys had A1s that were not as experienced to me, and they were out shooting me. I couldn't catch the breach, they were catching it. So that's where I was like, okay, never again, because I mean, this thing does 120 frames a second.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah, you can hear that. Is that
as
is
far
that
as,
is that the one with the is that the global shutter one?
yep, it'll do 1/80,000th. And so I
Right.
guess that's what we wanted to test was to see if we can catch rounds coming out of the barrel.
Hmm.
But the caveat that I didn't know when I got this was that when you burst, no matter at what frequency, low, medium, high, it'll only go to 1/16,000th. So
Hmm.
we did catch 9 and we did catch 556 come out of the barrel in the last one, but it's blurry.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, if you have a Sony A1 that can burst at 1/32,000th, I mean that's where the owner of Clandestine Luke, he's taking pictures of 357 tack sharp. So
Crazy. That's
yeah.
nuts. Yeah, that's wild. I like the Sony stuff, and I still have the A7 III. That's what the first camera that when I really started getting serious about doing this professionally, that was the one I bought. Now I have the A7R5. I'm not super fan, not digging it too much. Mostly, it's great for for studio stuff, but if you're doing low light lifestyle, it's not. The A7 III still does better. So
What's the ISOs like on it?
it doesn't have. I mean, it gets really grainy. So low light, like if I was doing an A7 III, even in studio under like video, like LEDs, not flash, it would get grainy, even with a fast lens. So it's a really noisy sensor and in low light.
Yeah, if you're shooting product, that's because that's the thing is I love listening to these younger guys where they're like, oh, we have AI noise reduction. It's like, well, if you're shooting client work and you hit that too hard, guess what? All the markings on the AR lower are then just blurred out and you've
Hmm.
botched the shot for the client. So noise is
Yeah,
still very important.
I took it. We were doing a CQB class in Louisiana, and that was the first project I brought that body on, and we were shooting inside of a shoot house, and went through the photos after, and I was like, these are all not awesome, just super noisy. But I should have done my research on it. Really, I didn't. It was one of those kind of stupid moments where I'm like, oh, this would be great. I was doing a shoot for Zeiss Optics up in North Idaho, Zeiss hunting, and I was like, I need something that has a little bit more resolution for some of the shoots we were doing out there, product stuff staged in uh, on location, and it did great for that. But then for the rest of the stuff that I do on the majority of my time, which is a lot of low light stuff, it just wasn't cutting it. So I'll probably, you know, pass that body along and then do something a little bit different.
Were you
Um,
able to kind of hedge that with Zeiss still being like, hey guys, you got any connection to the lenses here?
yeah, I
Because that'd be
tried.
nice.
Zeiss is a tough one. German company. I did a
Yeah.
couple of shoots with them. I talked to one of their lens engineers. We were doing a shoot in Pelham, Idaho. I think it was Pelham, Southern Idaho, and he asked me. I was shooting it, and I was using Sony glass, and he's like, "You ever shoot on?" It comes up. He's like, "You shoot on Zeiss glass?" And I'm like, "Sometimes." Like I used to. We shot on when I was doing Marcom work at school. We would shoot on. We had a set of vintage Zeiss prime lenses for video, so I dig them. I just don't personally. Until recently, I just bought a little Zeiss lens for this A7 III for the podcast thing, but I haven't owned any personally. They did provide some of their new Zeiss primes for that photo shoot that we did in North Idaho, and we used them for a few things, but I still preferred the Sony glass over the Zeiss glass for that
Really? What
application.
was it
So
about it?
I think it was just um, it could have just been personal preference, right? Like when I've been shooting on Sony for forever, and so I know the feel of the lenses, right?
Yeah.
And so they have ergonomically they have a different kind of feel. I didn't much care for the focus ring, so it didn't wasn't so much about the image clarity because they looked great, right? It had more to do with just being able to move fast in that setting, right? And so I slapped them on, got a few shots for the sake of being able to say that we shot a Zeiss product with Zeiss glass. But then once we got those, I pulled them off because we were shooting sunrises. We would drive all the way up into the mountains to get the sunrise shots, and you're pushing for time, right? And light changes really quickly, especially at sunrise out there. And so it was like, I need these shots fast. So I grabbed the shots, threw this Sony stuff back on, and was able to finish the shoot. But I don't know that I would necessarily. They didn't wow me as much as some of the Sony glass did, even in the imagery. Like I don't know that I would buy them.
Huh. Yeah, I
So
mean, I've only shot with them a handful of times, but cranking down that f-stop to 11, I was impressed with the sharpness. But yeah,
mhm.
did Sony bought them, right?
I don't
I
know.
think, I
Did
think they
they?
got bought out. or I could be wrong though.
I mean, that'd be a big acquisition for Sony because Zeiss is one of the OG glass manufacturers. I mean, most of the, the actual glass in a lot of the products that we buy are being manufactured in German factories.
Yeah.
So that would be a big acquisition for Sony because it's either Japan or Germany. That's where the glass is coming from. So, no, man, awesome. If somebody wants to work with you, Matt, assuming that you want people to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that or get in touch with you?
Just website. I got a submission on there, just mattlingo.com. I've got my email address, matt@mattlingo.com. I'm very full of myself. I'd stay away from the DMs because I don't have too much time to going through there. My father's very upset with me that I don't see his DMs. He sent me a very important information about UFO news, just
Mm,
because what I have coming in there. So yeah, those two places would be best.
that's awesome, man. Real quick, do you print your photos out?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in that. Um, Something different about the experience of holding photo printed out. So we have a bulletin board in the house, for like the kids to see and stuff. And I'll
Mm,
I'll put some of my work stuff up there, and I'll just put photos of them up there as well. But I try and cycle it as much as I can, just going down to Walgreens or whatever, spitting that out, and then having all those prints, and then that's then developed into like a repository of a ton of photos that we can then give the kids and stuff like that. Because you can't pass your iCloud, down to your son when you die or something like that. But we'll have these pictures instead.
that's true. Have you ever submitted any work to like an exhibition or a show at all?
Okay. A long time ago, I was more into that just because that's where I came from for the fine art perspective. I spent a lot of time in school printing, working with different papers and all that, and I spent a lot of time in the dark room, just analog printing, which is a whole experience in itself and a lot of fun. Where it's dodging and burning isn't clicking a mouse and dragging it. You actually have a burn board that you're wiggling or a little wand and all that stuff.
Hmm.
So yeah, I did once in my life. Yeah, at one point I was pretty much into that. Nowadays, it's just pretty much the small little fun ones.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna try to maybe put together a guns and camera themed exhibition. I was talking to some of the guys that I've had on, and they all seem kind of interested in that. So I might hit you up and see if you're interested in participating if you have time, because I know you're slammed.
For
But
sure.
all right, man. Matt, I don't want to keep you too long, so thank you so much. Do you have any closing comments? Anything you want to say to people watching this? Um,
No, I think we covered pretty much all. Just want to apologize for the early days of my Instagram. It was pretty embarrassing, but yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. It was good talking to you.
Yeah, man, this has been awesome. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out with Guns and Cameras. If you don't already follow Matt, be sure to go to Instagram, look at not Matt Lingo, give him a follow, maybe give him some engagement. That's an important thing for us all these days. Matt, thank you so much. This has been awesome. You guys, thanks for hanging out. This has been Guns and Cameras. Have a good day. But there is no spoon. If you guys understood where that movie reference came from, be sure to let me know in the comments. Y'all, we are at the end of this week's episode of Guns and Cameras featuring the legendary Matt Lingo. Matt, thank you so much for being this week's guest of Guns and Cameras, for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, some of your backstory, your expertise, and for inspiring us to get out there and make stuff. Constantly create. Get your work out there. Post it on social media. Do not be afraid of criticism. There is no such thing as the perfect shot. There is only the next shot. And with that being said, I promise you guys some pyrotechnics at the end of this week's episode. So I have here a bowl full of gunpowder that I have rescued from the confines of brass casings. And we're going to see what happens when we light this stuff up. So if you were, this is science, my friend, science. So here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey, that was pretty good. Not too bad. I mean, it wasn't as explosive as I expected, but hey, whatever. I'm in my garage, and I should probably get a fire extinguisher in here. So, guys, thank you so much for hanging out, for watching Guns and Cameras, for supporting the channel. If you like what you see, I'm trying to do more of it. So, like, share, follow, subscribe. Tell your friends about Guns and Cameras. We're not going away. We're only going to get bigger and better, hopefully. So, while I go get a fire extinguisher, you guys, well, just be safe out there. Don't play with fire. Have a nice day, and we'll catch you next time.